What the heck is a clock spring? What does it even do? Where is it even at? Today we're going to find out. Let's get started. This is a 2010 Toyota Tacoma with the V6, and it came in for fluid services, a check engine light, and an airbag light. We're going to show you what we found, what's going on with the check engine light, which is a minor teardown, and then we're going to take a look at the clock spring. Talking about clock springs, it's a really weird part. The name of it is really strange. We've actually had customers call and we tell them what's wrong with their car and say, yeah, you know, you got a bad clock spring. And they say, no, my clock's fine. It works fine. There's nothing wrong with my clock. We're like, no, it's not your clock on your radio or dash. It's just what they call a part that's behind your steering wheel that runs wiring for airbag and buttons and things. And we'll show you that here in a minute. We're going to take it apart today, do some wrenching. Let's go ahead and take a look around this thing, and then we're going to jump in and start checking out that check engine light. Here's the front of this Tacoma. You can see the headlights are starting to yellow just a little bit, but they're still clear. You can see through them just fine. These are really, really good trucks. This one's in pretty good condition, and it has some really cool wheels. It looks like snowflakes, Mrs. Wizard. You're just wanting it to be colder out since it's 105 out today. Yeah, it is super hot. The paint's nice on this one. It's not dented or beat up. You can see there it's a TRD off-road. It does have a nice gator tonneau cover, and you can see it's a V6 SR5. It does have a few tiny dings on the side, on the passenger side, but otherwise it's very nice. Let's go ahead and get that scan tool hooked up. While I'm getting this thing to load up here, speaking of clock springs, thinking clocks, don't forget Mrs. Wizard's part work. She has that really cool clock I talked about in the previous video, and lots of really cool stuff. There's a link in the description to go check out those, so make sure you don't miss out on those. Let's see here. Go engine, ECT. We'll go through and check trouble codes. And it says knock sensor 2 circuit high, history and current. We've already checked that out, and I'll show you what's going on. It's going to be a little bit of a teardown. Let's go ahead and jump under the hood. Here is our 4-liter V6, 1GR-FE I think it is. I have the little cover off here, and I had the Techlong camera out, putting it through there, and it's really hard to see. But the knock sensors themselves are not bad, and here's a picture of where they're at, what it looks like when all this is apart. But this black intake and also the lower intake has to come off to get down to them. And what's happened is mice have gotten in there and chewed the wires to the knock sensors, and that's why we have the high circuit code. You just barely see them, and it's really not much I can show on camera. It's so tight in there. But we're going to be removing all of this to get down to the knock sensors. So it's not a huge deal. I got a new harness ordered. We're going to go ahead and replace the knock sensors while we're there, because you know how luck goes. You do all this work, and in 3 months, one of them will fail. Might as well get it done while it's apart. 2 knock sensors and a new harness, and we'll be back in business and put it back together. That will solve that issue. Now let's check out that pesky airbag light. Let's get back to the scan tool. So now I'm going to be going to the SRS airbag section. We were in the engine section. I'm going to go check for codes there. Driver side squib circuit open. Squib? What the heck's a squib? Are they talking about Squidward on SpongeBob, Mrs. Wizard?
I don't know. I mean, that's squid and not squib.
Yeah, well, this is squib, which means the circuit that goes to this particular airbag right here. It's the wiring, it's the actual circuit of the airbag right here. So I've actually already checked it, and it's actually the airbag clock spring, which I just mentioned at the beginning of the video. It's like, what the heck's a clock spring? My clock works fine. It actually has nothing to do with the clock at all. It's just called that because the way the cable is wound. Have you ever wondered, the buttons on my steering wheel, the horn, the airbag wiring, how do they get that through the steering wheel and be able to turn the wheel without tearing the wires and tearing it up? Well, today you're going to find out what a clock spring is. We're going to take the old one apart and show you all the unraveled actual cable, spiral cable is what it is. So first of all, let's get started on getting the steering wheel off. It has to come off to get to it. So here's our brand new clock spring. I'm not going to move it because it's locked into place. It has to be in a correct position to install it. I'm not going to remove this yet. But this is what it looks like anyway. Now let's go ahead and get the old one out. We're going to have to remove the actual airbag that's right here, and you do that through the sides. There's little clip panels that come off, and then it's a Torx on either side, which is a T30. Let's go ahead and get that done. Here's one little cover. You can see where the cruise control stalk comes through. That comes off. And you don't need any big, huge pry tool or anything. These come off actually very easily. Just like that. Now we're going to go ahead and remove these side Torx. You'll actually see them if you look through there. They're actually on the top of the hole up in here. Go ahead and remove those. Once you have the screws loose, it still is not going to pull out. You have to get in with a little screwdriver and pry the little black, there's actually a little plastic piece that holds the screws from falling into the steering wheel. You've got to pry them out of the way a little bit, like that, and like that. Move this up out of the way. And we can see there's a lot of wiring inside of here that goes to back behind. There's a clock spring. You can actually see it back there. It's a black circle shape that's back there. That's where all the wiring runs through a spiral cable. But let's go ahead and get this stuff out of the way here. So you get these little yellow tabs pulled out, and then you can pull these off. This is your actual airbag. You can see where the connections are. You don't want to do this in a high static environment or using metal tools, because you could short circuit those and that can actually blow up and actually hurt you. So be very careful with these. Okay, so we got cables out of the way. Let's go ahead and disconnect these white connectors like so. Now we can remove this center nut that holds the steering wheel on. Now you need a steering wheel puller that fits. You can see these little holes on the side are threaded. There's one on either side. And this turns to pry the steering wheel off. Some of these you can pull lightly off and they'll come off, but most of them you require a puller. And that one actually was one that came off easy. I just turned this by hand and it came loose, which is very, very good. Sometimes they're on so tight that you have to get a wrench and really turn on it pretty hard. Luckily, this one cooperated very easily. One thing before you pull it all the way off, put a little mark with a permanent marker just to make sure you get it lined right back up where it was. Usually they have a master key on the spline that won't let you put it on wrong, but just in case you take it off, oh crap, you know, you're in trouble. You know exactly now where it went. There's our steering wheel. And this one did not have a master key in it, so you could put it on crooked and it wouldn't even matter. It wouldn't even care, I guess I should say. So now we know where we were. We can put it right back where it was. Here's our clock spring. Whenever you steer the steering wheel, this steers with it. See that? I'm not worried about the position or orientation right now because this one's going in the garbage. It doesn't even matter. But that's how that works. Now we got to remove this clamshell that's right here. Once you get the screws off, you just gently pry these apart and they will come apart. You might have to undo the tilt steering, give you a little bit more room. But we really don't need to, pull these things all the way out. We just need to get enough room in here so we can disconnect the wiring. So once you get that pried apart, there's latches on the back as well. You get those pried apart, and then the whole clamshell will come out just like that. We'll leave the top one, we don't really need it removed. Disconnect our connectors. And these just snap on, there's no screws or anything. Just undo the snaps here. There's one. There's two. And a third one up top. Go ahead and remove these connectors here. There should be one more right here. And there we have it. The old one is out. Here's our new one. The little orange key shape here is keeping it perfectly oriented so it gets installed in the correct position. Do not pull this out until you got everything installed first. Like I said, they just snap into place. So let's go ahead and snap this one in. All three snaps. Okay. Now let's go take this old one and take it apart and look what's on the inside. So here's the old one. I'll show you taking it apart and what it looks like on the inside. How is it you can turn your steering wheel with all this wiring and it doesn't get jumbled and bundled up and break the wires, which it has broken the wires inside of here. That's why we have that squib code. And in the reassembly, what we just saw going apart, it's the same thing going back together. Plug in all your connectors. Once you get everything situated, you'll pull your orange key and don't move it after that. Put your steering wheel back on where you marked it and reassemble just like we took it apart. So let's go ahead, see if we can get this thing broken out of here. All kinds of little clips on the side, and I'm just breaking them because I don't even care. This right here is not the clock spring. This is our steering angle sensor. This tells all the computer systems in the car whenever you're turning, the steering wheel's at 20 degrees, at 180, at 320, at, you know, whatever it's at. That's for analog brakes, traction control, and things like that, to kind of tell the systems what is the driver doing with the steering wheel at this current moment. This is the computer's eyes as far as being able to see what are you doing with the steering wheel, and it is able to see those degrees. Those can go bad, and you still have to buy this. Usually you just buy this whole unit if you're going to go through all this trouble. So now this is the clock spring with the steering angle sensor removed. Let's go ahead and see if we can get this thing to break apart. There we go. Watch this. Ribbon cable. Somewhere in this ribbon cable there's some broken traces, and is why we're getting the squib code. From here to here, something's broken. It's not getting a signal to the airbag, the actual airbag itself. This is dangerous because when it's time to deploy the airbag in an accident, it's going to send the signal out and nothing's going to happen because it doesn't even make it to the airbag. So the customer asks, is this dangerous? Do I really need to do this? Yes, you definitely do need to do this. It's not cheap. This assembly here is not cheap either, but it definitely has to be done. So anyways, whenever you're driving your car tomorrow and you're wondering, how is it I push a button and it gets through the steering wheel to the car? And it's through these little white spiral cables and all these pins. This is the car side, and through here goes to the steering wheel. So I definitely want to do a video for you guys to show you what is a clock spring, where is it at, and what does it do. Now you know all the answers to those questions, and Crazy D takes a lot of calls, and you know, we get a car in here where this clock spring is bad, and he calls them and tells them, says, hey, clock spring's bad, that's all it's going to need, and they're like, what? And like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, my clock works fine. It's not your clock. It's just called, like you saw, spiral cable thing. Is that fixable? No. They're made so cheaply that once you take it apart, most of the clips and things break. And the time it would take for me to solder or fix or mess with that, which then now I'm liable for if you get into a wreck and your airbag doesn't deploy. It's as much as just buying a new one. We're just in a disposable society. It doesn't make sense to try and fix that. And it could take an hour or two to go through all the traces on all the cable and figure out where's the break. It's just not worth it. For safety, especially, it's not worth it. It's best to just take it out, dispose of it, put a brand new one in, and it'll last for many, many more years without any trouble. This bill on this vehicle could be super high because anyone that knows the 1GRFE knows that if you're doing NOx sensors to get the coolant pipes out, the book way to do it is to pull the cylinder heads off. We have a way that we're able to do that and not charge the customer, I don't know, 14 or some crazy amount of hours, 16, 18 hours. We can do it for half that or less. But we do have to take the intakes off and do a few things, but there is a way to do it without removing the cylinder heads. In that case, we'll just charge by the hours it took to get the job done. Saves you some money. There are instances where that can be done. And then we got the clock spring. They also wanted all the fluid services on this vehicle done, and it's going to be $2 to $3 grand range. That's a lot of work up there. We got gaskets and coolant and all kinds of things in there, NOx sensors, harness, clock spring, fluid. Guys, you know what, fluids have gone up so much? I remember I used to be able to get synthetic gear oil for like $7.50 a quart. They're like $21.50 a quart now. If you get a really high-end brand, it can be $30 a quart. And he wants all differentials, transfer case, all those things done. Man, that adds up fast. But this is a Toyota. It's definitely worth it. No car on earth is going to go 400,000 miles and nothing ever breaks, ever. They're man-made. They're not perfect. Toyotas do have the least amount of failures in a 400,000 mile time, and they're going to get to 400,000 miles. Your Chevy Equinox, probably not. So I hope you guys enjoyed that, doing some disassembly and showing you some things like that. Don't forget to check out Mrs. Wizard's Part Works. There's a link in the description for that. Check out Mrs. Wizard's Ways as well. A lot of cool content going on there. And hit the subscribe button here because we have really cool videos coming down the way for you guys. Thanks for watching.